You know, one topic I've been thinking about is being angry slash forgiveness because, I've been consuming some kind of incel videos. And one thing that's clear about incels, which I'm more and more convinced is one of the most important categories that we have today, is that many of them are hateful and resentful and they're angry. This also goes for similarly affected groups like NEETs and autistic people and so on. Basically, the people that I call delinquents, the outsiders who can't assimilate to society and its, particular desires. Do they have the right to be angry? Do they have the right to be upset? Because I feel like there's some gaslighting going on here somehow that, it's okay that, somebody gets abused, put to the side all his life, and he becomes hateful and resentful, and people are like, "Wow, you need an attitude adjustment." Um, it's a little bit bullshit, right? That fundamentally the only reason why some people are nice and kind and well adjusted is because they haven't been hurt enough, right? But sling them in a war, sling them in an abusive household, sling them into a body that's ill-suited for purpose. The typical thing: 4'5", bald, ugly guy, and see how they fare. It's almost like they have a reason to be angry. They have a reason to be upset. And there's a lot of gaslighting going on in these circles where, these people are just told to pull themselves up by the bootstraps and get it together and take a shower and be nice. But you could ask almost like, why be nice if nobody was nice to me? Why are you expecting something that really realistically cannot be demanded? I mean, and so here we're getting into a kind of contradiction with leftist progressive people and these affected groups like incels who are bitter, that on the one hand they see workers as oppressed. They see women as oppressed, largely at least. They see LGBT people as oppressed. But somehow when it comes to incels, disaffected young men, hateful young men, that they're hateful too, but they're being charged as kind of being hateful toward the wrong people. So it's okay to be hateful toward, the CEO of United Healthcare who got wagged by Luigi Mangione, Tortellini. And it's okay to wish the same up on Musk and all these guys that I hate too. But when the incels say like, "Oh, fuck you people, you've been hurting me forever," when they say, "You know what, I hate all of you people," then they're told to execute an attitude adjustment. And that's really strange because that's a conservative critique. right? This kind of conservative moralism of, Jordan Peterson, pull yourself up by the bootstraps, put your horse fucking, put your house in order if you criticize others. They suddenly shift. And I've been thinking, is this justifiable? Because, obviously, you would want people to be not, you don't want them to be nice, you want them to be kind, because one observation I've kind of made or had is that I don't have an observation, you make one, right? Is that being nice and being kind is not the same. So I've been going in this direction that I don't really care if somebody uses slurs or is an asshole or is not completely adjusted to my more kind of empathetic leftist point of view, which is more kind of nice and squishy, because I think it's time that we kind of see through the illusions, to see through these little outlines that people have. Because I think we've been, one issue with the kind of what people have described as woke and PC and all that is that we have been kind of been taken hostage by words, which is funny in and of itself, because postmodernists who are typically leftists would advise us to not be slaves to words. And that's one point that I've made before, is that like somebody asks, are you an anti-natalist or are you not? And I've had to struggle with the question, because on the one hand, I don't like ideologies. I don't want to just be another pawn of some fucking ideology that disgusts me. On the other hand, I am some kind of anti-natalist. So am I? So I made the point that, but nobody really uses the word anti-natalist to say I oppose procreation. Nobody actually uses the word that way. I figured out that am I too close or am I too? Where should I be in terms of the positioning? I don't know. Could try this. So anyway, I figured out that that the way the word anti-natalist is used is just basically a placeholder or a shorthand for pessimistic views, right? So the anti-natalists are people who don't like society, essentially, who think society is unjust and the word is generally bad. They don't use the word to say I'm against procreation. And when you think about it, all words are used that way. So the word, I forget what the fuck the example was gonna be, but I guess the point I'm trying to make is that the example of what is a woman, the stupid question of what is a woman. It is clear that these right-wingers or TERFs who want to reduce womanness to chromosomes, right? So a woman is a biological creature. It's clear that nobody actually uses the word either woman or female to just denote chromosomes, chromosomes or genitals or reproductive ability. Nobody actually uses the word that way, and when you look at it more closely, it doesn't check out. A woman, you can't reduce a woman to reproductive ability, because there are women who are postmenopausal, so they can have kids, but you still see them as women. So the point I'm trying to make is simply that you cannot reduce, that the word can never be reduced to one very specific, hyper-specific definition. And so the sex is obviously connected to gender, but precisely because of that, you cannot reduce gender to sex. If you could reduce gender to sex, then gender and sex could not be intertwined, because they'd be the same, but they're not. Or but again, even if you think they're the same, there's just nobody in the world who would use the word woman as double X chromosomes. There's just nobody in the world could possibly get away with that logically. It's just not logical, it's not reasonable. You fall into a contradiction immediately when you look at a woman and you're like, oh, that's a woman right there. And, you're like, well, you mean the double X, you mean that meat bag with the double X chromosomes? And it's like, that's not what you mean. Even if you're the most, vile misogynist in the world, you don't mean that. You don't mean that. And so the point is that words are given by, the meaning and definition of words are not set in stone and given to us by God and delivered by Moses, through Uber Eats or whatever. It's something that we make up. Something that we make up, and it's contingent on the society. So basically what I'm trying to say in terms of the general context is that the modern left has been taken hostage by words. Oh yeah, I'm going back to my example of antinatalism. I made the kind of declaration that I postulated the question that, are you going to be a slave to words, or are you going to make the words be a slave to you? And I suggest the second option. We should not be slaves to the world. We should use words to our advantage. And so one practical consequence of that is that we shouldn't just stop at the surface level usage of words. So when some incel says, something like, these fucking blue pill cucks and the foids, and that's nasty. I think it's like embarrassing and stupid and hateful. But I think we should give them benefit of the doubt and understand that these guys are just hurt, and that I'm not just making it like a stupid, like, oh, we should have empathy. And that's not what I'm saying. I am saying that, but also I'm trying to get to the deeper point, which is that they're just using that as a means to communicate, and that they have real reasons to be angry, because very likely they got bullied in school, very likely they got abused by people, rejected just because of partially because of how they look, but also definitely personality issues there, which I think incels and kind of black pillars kind of underestimate. They kind of pretend that Freud didn't exist and psychology doesn't exist, and it's all reducible to appearances, and I think that's about as blue pilled as saying that appearances don't matter. Like, it's just a simple thought experiment could show you that no, it's not just reducible to your looks. That if you're at the right place at the right time, you get laid. That you don't have, it's just they overestimate how much looks matter. And the solution there or the problem is that there's no community anymore. And so if there were community and friendship, I think people would be sucking each other off left, right, and center. But anyway, so I'm not saying that it will solve all their problems, or that being a short, ugly guy is not a problem, and that it's not gonna deprive you of sexual experience. It probably will. I'm just saying it's probably, they just overestimate how much looks matter, and if you find yourself at the right place at the right time, your other qualities, elements of your personality could make up for the lack of what you lack in the looks department. So if you help a woman out and you find yourself alone with her, I mean, come on, something's gotta give at that point. I mean, I can be the only one to have experience with this. It's just a matter of where you are. It's a matter of the situation. It's not reducible to your looks, but that's another matter. The main point I'm trying to make is that that maybe we should face the fact that these incels, right-wing guys, NEETs, hikikomori, just general kind of nihilistic people who hate people and hate the world and hate women, or they think they do, or they hate minorities. Like, of course, this is not acceptable to hate minorities or to hate women just because they're women. I'm just saying that there's a kind of barrier here, a kind of pretentious woke barrier, where we just pretend that men in some sense don't implicitly hate women, at least sometimes, right? I mean, less woke comedians like Patrice O'Neill or Bill Burr, at least when he was younger, he would say, like, they would make these honest points, like it's not like they hate women on some philosophical level. They hate them the way you hate your buddy when he makes a stupid joke, or it's like the way you hate your father because he's kind of annoying, but he's also your father, right? So they kind of mistake this kind of base biological, psychological hate with some kind of intellectual hate. That, so I think, when I was convinced by this was when I was reading the reviews on Goodreads under the book No Longer Human by Dazai, which is a Japanese novel. And that website is women dominated, because I guess fiction is women dominated. And so a lot of women just kind of give a shallow kind of critique of, oh, but he was a misogynist. It's like, yeah, he might have been a misogynist, but it wasn't a philosophical misogyny. It was a kind of misogyny that was born out of general neglect, abuse, autism, and mental illness. And it doesn't matter if the perpetrators were women or not. It was the whole society, really. Like, when a person is failed, they're always failed. This is my conviction, that a person is always failed by society itself. Because, to give the Joker line, because we live in a society. I don't know what's the Joker's voice? Oh, we live in a society. Because we live in a society, every decision, everything that happens is tangled up with society itself. So this is why you need to reject this kind of faux individualism of Peterson, where he says, put your house in order. Put your house in order, you know. And if a woman gets sexually harassed, then, you know, he suggested maybe they should have gone to the, you know, like when he had this debate with this, like, I don't know what it was, a Vox journalist or something like that, the so-called Vogue journalist. And, you know, the guy would say, like, yeah, but, you know, back in the day, like, women really did have it tough. Like, don't you agree? Like, you know, sometimes they got abused and it was accepted in the society and there's nothing they could do about it. And Jordan Peterson's glib response, and this is where his kind of ideology falls apart, is, well, they could go to the police, or you know, they could have gone to the police. That's something that they could do. It's like, what a glib response. You know, that doesn't solve it. Like, imagine you're living in the USSR and somebody says, well, you know, I don't like the fact that I'm being stolen from by the party. I don't like the fact that there is embezzlement and corruption all over the goddamn place, and I'm being blackmailed by the, you know, the whatever the Russian word is, the, you know, the functionaries of the state. I don't know if this is a Hungarian translation, but we have a word like chinatnik. You're like this kind of functionary of the USSR. And so it's like imagine, okay, so you have a problem with that, well, go to the police. Well, good luck with that. You just get beaten to death. So this is why we need societal critique. And so, I mean, that's kind of a side point. I think the main point is that that you know, these women on Goodreads, what pisses me off about it is that, but these same women pretend, or at least, well, let's not say pretend, maybe they really are progressives, but, you know, they proclaim to be progressive. They say, like, okay, we care about, you know, this, that, and the other. We care about the oppressed. We have Black History Month on the they have a Black History Month on the website. They have an LGBT month on the website, and very heavily left, right? But then when it comes to neurodivergent, of course they say the same thing of neurodivergent people. We care about the neurodivergent too. We care about their rights. But what I noticed is that, well, they only care until the divergent becomes really divergent. Right? Once the divergent person becomes a little bit too divergent, suddenly they jump ship and they no longer give their undying support. And the difficult, something that they need to come to terms with. Something that the left needs to come to terms with is that incels and similar kind of right-wing guys who hate people, they are, and yes, all the way up to the school shooters. That's another thing you're not supposed to mention, because we're required to look at school shooters as if they were some kind of, you know, isolated monster that you're not allowed to have any sympathy for. You know, there are certain groups in society that you're just not allowed to have any sympathy for. But see, this is where you're contradicting yourself. This is where you're running afoul of your own intuition, of your own ideology, because so the statement is, what the left needs to come to terms with is that these guys are neurodivergent. These guys, girls, whoever these may be, kind of, what's the word? Nihilists. You know, nihilist in the sense of They hate people, right? Um, what's the word for hating people? They're misanthropy. They're misanthropes, and they just hate people. They treat people badly. They might be even violent, and so what they have to come to terms with is that pretty much all these people are neurodivergent, and so there's something kind of nasty about and contradictory about throwing these people off the boat and pretending they're not part of the groups that should be defended and cared for. That's something the left needs to come to terms with, is that if they are really, and I consider myself part of the left, only because I think there are two options, the left and the right, and the right are just a bunch of idiots and psychopaths, so there's no point in dealing with them at all. But the point is that if you really want to be a leftist, if you really care about social justice, well, whoever said it was easy, whoever said it was comfortable, there is no point defending people who are already defended. That's what they like to do. We live in an extremely constraining society, despite talk of the opposite, that we have all this freedom and all the hedonism, and no, it's not quite as simple. We are very constrained by the society around us, the norms around us, the economy around us, everything. We have perhaps never been in a more constraining society ever, in many ways. Not always, but many ways. We beat the shit out of each other and ourselves. And so I guess the challenge would be, are you willing to, the same way that you're willing to look at, let's say, black people in the US and say, when a snarky 4chaner comes and says, well, black people commit more crime. Well, then you're ready to say, yes, many of them as individuals are kind of nasty. They do nasty things. They rob, they stick up stores, and they stick up, they rob people, and, they're rowdy sometimes, and blah, blah, blah. Not all of them, but many of them. But then they're ready to come with the explanation. Well, it's because of slavery. It's because of Jim Crow. And that's absolutely correct. Because of, zoning laws, of just absolutely obliterating these people through discrimination, systemic discrimination that is only getting worse under the kind of neoliberal economy. There's a huge wage gap there. And so they're ready to come to the table with those explanations, but when it comes to, poor Dazai or poor Yozo from No Longer Human, they're not ready to come to the table with the same, or many of them are at least, are not ready to come to the table with the same open heart and empathy that, yes, Yozo was a misogynist on some level in the novel. He would kind of treat women badly. He would abandon them. He would call prostitutes kind of lunatics, but to me it's a little bit more complicated. I'm not gonna get into that now. The point is, why are they not ready to provide the same deeper analysis on why that guy might be that way, and that there's a deeper level to all this, that he was abused, that he was cast aside, that he was not cared for properly, even by some of the women in his life. So perhaps some of his anger is in some sense justified, The same way it's justified for you to, the same way they think it was justified of Luigi to kill a CEO. But somehow they think they're not part of the problem. They think it's only the CEOs who are the problem. Well, why do they think they're not part of the problem? Have they never bullied somebody? Are they not part of the system which abuses people and keeps them down? What are they doing exactly to make that all stop? That goes beyond virtue signaling on X. Have they never bullied somebody? Have they never rejected a guy because of how he looks or the way he talks, essentially because he's autistic? Are they so sure that they're so pure? One thing that Dasein makes clear in the novel is that society is an individual. So we are all society. We all represent in our own ways society. The only way you encounter society is by encountering an individual. Without the human beings existing alone, because that's the only way they can exist, there is no society. The rocks and the trees and even the buildings are not society until a human is connected to it in some way and says this is a school, so on. So I guess what I'm trying to say is not to somehow justify violence. I don't think that's a solution necessarily. Depends on how you do it, but so I'm kind of in dangerous water. I'm not trying to say that you should just lash out at society. No, I'm trying to say that there's a hypocrisy in hating the CEOs, hating capitalism, stressing systemic issues, but then when it comes to people like incels and other kind of hurt people, just turning around and dismissing them as kind of mad individuals and bad people. And then the suggestion that they are not part of the problem is even more annoying. So that's one issue. And the other issue I kind of haven't finished is just this idea that we really don't like each other all that much. As much, again, this is kind of a romantic notion, this idea that men are supposed to somehow like women and respect them as an entity. You almost want to ask, why should I respect them? George Carlin said that respect should be earned. So you don't respect capitalism. You don't respect parental authority per se. I don't. I'm a pretty big anarchist. I don't really respect my parents or my family or my teachers that I used to have or any boss I used to have. I think I hate people. They can all go fuck themselves. But why should I? Why is this romantic demand being pushed that I should respect women and that I should like them? On what basis? To a heterosexual man, there really is no fundamental reason to like women because all they do is get in your way. They get in the way of what you want. And I don't just mean sexual things. That might come first, but then there's also, care and love and touch. And they're also kind of vanguarding that. They're also kind of protecting that. Like they are the ones who give it. And you have to get through this kind of maze to get there. And a bunch of shit gets in your way, like how you look and how you talk. Whether you're short and whether you're autistic. And So many of these girls will be part of the problem or used to be. And so they remove themselves from responsibility, and they just say, well, they're nasty. The same way that, Peterson says, or, the capitalists say, oh, well, you're just lazy, too lazy to work. And it's like, you're not allowed to fight back and say, but hold on, you're part of the problem. So I'm a little bit skeptical now of this kind of one-sided demand that men, incels, needs, misanthropes should just kind of get an attitude adjustment, and women are kind of nothing for it, or normies are kind of nothing for it. They're just kind of taken for granted as the good people. I think we should have a more honest dynamic where we don't pretend that we like each other. I don't see any reason to like women as such. I don't see any reason to like men as such. I don't. Why should I then do it to women? Why should I show particular respect to women as such? So, yeah, I guess what I'm asking for, which is something I've demanded before, but of course nobody listens, is not violence or hate or any of this, but honesty. So for me, I prefer honest people. I've always preferred the bad guys who told the truth. So that's why I want to return to this idea that being nice and being kind are not the same. In fact, most people who are kind are probably not nice. There's a depth to not being nice. There's a depth to the people who are hurt and are kind of misanthropic, because they can still have love. Like, I'm thinking of people like George Carlin or Charles Bukowski, that you might know, that are hateful, but they still have a lot of love, and they actually have more insight, a depth of insight, than a nice person might have. Somebody who may not get cancelled. So this is what I've coined this term pretentiously, the revenge of the averages. The revenge of the averages is a concept that means, well, let me just set the stage. That I think that genius requires resistance. So it's as a parent, if you're a parent, it's not possible to support your child into genius. The only thing you can, well, I'm gonna prepare a breakfast for you. I'm gonna sing you to sleep. I'm gonna be there for you. That's okay, but that's only prepares them for mediocrity. Genius comes from strife and hate and resentment and difference. It has to be chiseled out of people. I seriously doubt you can get a genius who kind of plays by the rules and does what the average person does and what is expected of him. Of course, it's possible. Like maybe Mozart or Beethoven were normal. I don't fucking know. And yet we know that genius is associated with madness. We know that from Van Gogh, and we know that from probably most authors who ever lived. They all had bad lives, bullied, beaten. They didn't exactly follow the rules. They may have done bad things. And then so I'm thinking specifically of Louis C.K. that he was caught kind of, I don't know what it was exactly, kind of harassment maybe. Like he would masturbate and kind of use his power to masturbate in front of women, and you can see why you find it fucked up. I'm not gonna pretend it's not fucked up because he basically used his power to do it. That's the story, right? And if that's true, then yeah, there's something messed up about it. There's a part of me that says that's how things work. I mean, it's you know, maybe you can locate a little bit of opportunism there, but I don't know enough about the story to comment deeply. I just want to use this as an example, really. That well, like in some sense they exploited him because that guy's a degenerate and lonely, and didn't they just kind of exploit his loneliness to get up, to get ahead in the business? I mean, that's just conjecture, but I don't know. It's just I'm the sort of person who is, having been on the receiving end, I tend to be more receptive or more tolerant, let's put it that way, toward the so-called bad guys. I mean, when I was a kid, I watched WWE, and I was the kid who always supported the heels, not the faces. The heels, the bad guys. And I think modern fiction shows a similar kind of development where we have more sympathy towards villains, and that exposes something deep and rotten about us to an extent, but also maybe maybe a channel, maybe it speaks to what I've been talking about, that the story is deeper, that the victim is also the perpetrator is also the victim in the overwhelming majority of cases. So I should say that it's very cold. I can't feel my ass at all. I'm sitting on this rock, but I'm not gonna lose the chat. I just need to make sure I have an ass by the time I leave. But so anyway, so the point of the revenge of the averages is that there are, most people are average. Most people are average by kind of default, and sometimes a genius shows up. And because, as I've said, genius requires strife, it requires rejection. Something that you can read in a Bukowski poem, like, isolation. Isolation is the gift. All the others are a test of your endurance. This is really individualism there, right? And because of this, many of these people will have been hurt when they were younger or even up to today. But they're gonna become brilliant as a result. Not all of them, but many of them. And the average people, the Vokes, the normal people, will come and say, oh, we need to cancel this guy. We need to cancel this guy because he did something that's rather uncouth. So we're gonna ignore all his other achievements, all the other ways in which he's contributed positively to society. We're not gonna let him do his genius. We're not gonna give him a special if he's a comedian. We're not gonna give him a TV show. Only because he did something that we don't like. And that's the revenge of the averages, that you can have a genius. Sorry if I'm kind of put off, I'm a little bit uncomfortable because my ass is cold. But so we have a genius who's a true genius in some sense, who's then kind of taken down by the mob on essentially more or less trivial charges that really just won't matter in the grand scheme of things, in terms of his body of work, in terms of what he can actually contribute positively to the world. They're almost jealous. They could be, many of them just maybe they're not jealous, but there's a sense in which, like, let the mad people walk the streets, let them be geniuses. Because all this kind of woke stuff does, all this kind of overly PC stuff does, is it flattens everything out. It makes everything very clean, right? Clean. But clean doesn't mean good. Clean means there's no life. I mean, if you have a test tube and there's nothing in it but clean water, like, you need something else in there to make life. Like, you need something else. You need to have, I don't know what, but but you need to have chemical shit bouncing into each other. You can't just have pure cleanness. You can't just have pure air or pure water. That's not enough. You need to put some moss in there. You need to put fucking leaves or fucking something. You need to put fish that eat each other, that lay eggs, that make the fucking tank dirty. You need to do something. So this overly clean idea that the standard of cleanliness, it might make things clean, but it makes them boring. It makes them lacking in content and purpose. It doesn't challenge. Yeah. So that would be the kind of critique I would levy against that. So that's the revenge of the averages. That in order to have genius, you need to swallow some bad things. So I always like to make my videos an hour long, but I don't know if I have anything else to say for the moment. What else is there to talk about in the meantime? Yeah, I mean, it's something like Game of Thrones. There's a lot of bad people in Game of Thrones, but that's what makes it interesting. There's a sense in which the cleanliness cleans up the interesting bits, the bits that produce development and intrigue and novelty. Breaking Bad, same thing. But again, that leads down to a darker path that, Bukowski said, we actually, when we look at a villain, and he kind of predicted this a long time ago, that when we see a villain, we like that villain because secretly we want to be like him. This is why I said before there was a Flash game where you could beat the shit out of your boss. This is why, the WWF wrestler Stone Cold Steve Austin, WWF, WWE later, was popular, he said himself, because he would beat the shit out of his boss, Vince McMahon. And people took a liking, people liked the idea of beating the shit out of your boss. So people, and we have more examples of this today, like with Luigi Mangione, that we're not as nice as we think we are, but we may still be kind. And that's problematic because Luigi, that doesn't seem like an unkind man. He seemed to have a lot of empathy based on his Reddit comments from what I've seen in a video. But he still killed the man. So I guess the fundamental problem that I'm tiptoeing around, that I'm too afraid to get to, is murder. Nobody's allowed to talk about murder yet. It's all over the fucking places. I mean, in fiction, TV shows, in movies, Squid Game. New season of Squid Game. Murder is all over the place, and yet it's one of the biggest taboos. Not allowed to talk about murder. Because what if somebody takes inspiration from that or takes it the wrong way and murders somebody? It's just there's a challenge to the view that murder is wrong, but that my favorite was given by Death Note, the anime. It's also something I've talked about, that in that anime there's a Death Note, which is just a notebook that was dropped in the human world by a Shinigami, a god of death. And basically the point is that if you write down the name of a person in the Death Note and you think about their face, right, so that eliminates like people with the same name dying. You have to write down the name and you have to think about the face, right? And then they will die unless you specify the cause of death. They will die of a heart attack in, I don't know, a minute or something like that. And so the guy who picks up the Death Note, and most of you know what this is already, but Light, he does start to write names, and everybody, you can't help but ask the question, is he right? Which then prompts the question, will you write names? And it seems very difficult to say no. But you still want to say, no, it's wrong, it's wrong. Murder is definitely wrong. But then you look at the reactions to Luigi Mangione, who is a kind of Light. Light was handsome, Luigi is handsome. Light was brilliant, Luigi is brilliant. He's a very intelligent computer engineer. He killed a guy. Light also killed people. He's a kind of buffed, debuffed Light. A light. But where's the L? Where's the L that says, it's wrong, Luigi, don't do it. It's only like a couple bootlickers, like Ben Shapiro, I guess, who defended him, and most people didn't even agree with that. So the only way it seems to avoid the conclusion that murder is okay is to say, but in general, it decays the society. And that's not hard to see. That's not a kind of desperate move. It was impossible to imagine Luigi, or at least the reaction to Luigi, 10 years ago. 10 years ago, everything was much more polite. So the degeneration of society, which came with the rise of Trump, brought about the possibility of Luigi, or the reaction to Luigi at least, So you're still caught in this binary where, but we still don't want to live in a society that's governed by a lunatic like Trump. And Elon Musk, who's just in a way even worse because he's spectacularly stupid by all available evidence, supporting fascist groups. So the only possible defense you can mount for general decency against violence is that, but it's a harbinger of decay. It's a harbinger of a general decay of a society, and that innocent people will die that don't need to die. At the same time, we should recognize that people die all over the place and we don't do anything about it, or we do very little. There's this thought experiment, just to continue the line of death, given by antinatalists. That if you had a big red button, the BRB, the big red button, or the benevolent world exploder is also called, that if you could press the button, it would end all life on Earth, or it would end the entire universe. And the question is, would you press it? Well, you would say, no, it's wrong to kill everybody. Because if you did, you would be the biggest terrorist the world has ever seen. Worse than Hitler. Worse than everybody. On the other hand, there are so much suffering that goes on that's totally unjustified in and of itself. So then, it seems it would be the better choice to end it. But short of that button, there's no second best to the best, I think. Mindlessly shooting people is not a solution. Violent revolutions are not a solution. Even utopian ideas are not a solution. They've been proven to fail over and over again. Recall that there was supposed to be something called the end of history. History would end, liberal society would take over the world, and it would be more or less stable from there. That thesis ran its course by the 2000s. Everything went badly in the 2000s, from 9/11 to the Iraq War to the bank bailouts of 2008, then to Trump, COVID-19, the Ukraine war, Palestine, the worsening of climate change, the worsening of everything, increase in mental illness. Rates of antidepressants have more than doubled. Their prescription has more than doubled in the more developed parts of the world. So that idea has been canned, refuted, falsified. So, George Carlin said in 1996, the date is important here, 1996, in an interview in Conan, right, on Conan, that kind of night show, kind of talk show with Conan O'Brien, he said the famous phrase that I love. Said, if you think there's a solution, you're part of the problem. And what I found very interesting about that phrase is that phrase is so 1996, in that that phrase could only be said in optimistic times, could only be said in the 90s, when people thought, oh, maybe things will get better, because that's what they thought. They thought things were gonna get better now. No more wars. It's okay. Things are gonna get better now. So George Carlin had to come and say, you guys are deluded. The planet is fine, the people are fucked, and so on. But nowadays, George Carlin could not say that if he was alive. It wouldn't mean anything anymore. Nobody actually believes there's a solution anymore. There's nobody who actually says everything's gonna be okay. They all think, well, basically we're all screwed. And, presidents are fucking giving pardons to the, presidential pardons to their fucking sons, the same way they give it to turkeys on Thanksgiving. Then they also give it to terrorists, like the people on January 6th to attack the Capitol building. There's a general sense of brutal decay. And today, George Carlin would just laugh. George Carlin invited us to just enjoy the carnage. He said he enjoyed it when a lot of people died. But he also had a lot of empathy. He said, when I look at groups are dangerous, even the smallest two, they start to wear funny hats, make lists of people they don't like. But an individual, I can see the universe in their eyes. So his general message is that we should be individualists and don't try to hurt each other, guys. I'm gonna leave because I can't feel my dick. I feel it's really cold. I'm afraid I'm gonna leave. No violence, guys. Come on. Bye.